Go.
As seen here on the left screen, we have the two different scenarios. Scenario one was the process directly from Asia distributing to the local distribution centers located in the Caribbean, Central America, and South American markets. The Caribbean market consisted of Jamaica and Costa Rica, as the Central America consisted of Uruguay and Paraguay, and the South American markets consisted of Guatemala and El Salvador. Like scenario one, we are just going straight from the Asian manufacturing location straight to the local ones. And here is the submodel for the Asia distribution center. We have a entity as far as shipping, which ships the cases, and the TEUs, which are the 20-foot equivalent unit, consists of 1,000 cases per shipment. Asia is set up as a server, and then it's sent to the ship sync, which then sends the reordering shipment to each of the sources. The sources go off of the entity cases, and you see here we have 6 sources, one for each country, all connected with paths to a transfer node, which then goes to cases sold and then lost sales. As far as why we modeled it like this, there were several different ways you could have modeled this, as far as having a specific server for the Caribbean, the Central America, and the Southern American areas, the markets going to these as syncs, but we chose to do it a little bit different as far as setting up, like very previous to one of our past homeworks that we have done. As far as like the details of the modeling, at each center, as far as the sources, we had the entity cases arriving one every day, and the entities per arrival were based off of the random triangular distribution of the forecasted demanded, which varied for each location. Jamaica and Costa Rica had the same ones. Uruguay and Paraguay kind of differed, and then Guatemala and El Salvador differed. Then to go into that, there was a cost per use for each output buffer, as far as the operating cost for each country, and we converted that from CRC, which is the Costa Rican colons, to USD. I did not know that there was a function to where you could keep it CRC until later on, but I just kind of kept it at USD. In a more detail, as far as the ordering process to determine when the cases are going to the cases sold or to the lost sales is based off of the selection weight, as the country inventory of model entity.country, which was set up from a token that we had set up, is greater than 0. So as long as the inventory from any of these countries were greater than 0, they were sent to the cases sold. But if it was equal to 0 and they did not have any inventory during the time in which on hand, and if the the shipment was being sent, they were sent to the lost sale, so they were considered a lost sale. To further the detail, we set up a process on run initialized. We assigned the initial inventories, the reorder points, and the reorder quantity, which all can be found in the properties under the definitions tab, and those are all just the initial inventories were given as seen on the left hand side. They were given the reorder points and reorder quantities were values that we kind of figured out, just kind of started out messing with, just kind of see how it went, and then from there the country inventories were set up in a vector dimension type with 6 rows. The 6 rows were for each country, as well as the reorder quantities were also a integer state variable with dimension type vector, and then the reorder point was also the vectors. And my thinking behind this was, when we are calling upon this within the processes we can keep it very general and not have to do a ton of assignments as far as the roles for the state variables, as we did here in the first three initials assignings of inventory, reorder points, and reorder quantities. We also set up a token for the countries, and then we had it which country, and then within the process, the assigned country process, the token was then given a value, or the state variable of the token was given a name as far as country number. And then from there, we have the order process in which the inventory level is monitored with the assigned step, decide, and then deciding if they're reordered based off the inventory level. If the country's inventory level was less than the reorder point, it would decide if it has already reordered one. If not, then they were assigned a reordered. They created the order from Asia, the entity ship, and then they were assigned to an order of the actual order in which the countries reordered, and then they transfer from the from Asia to the sync and to send them on. And then after processing for Asia, we assign the actual order as the reorder quantity of the country minus math.round, which rounds the values of the country order quantities, times the random uniform of 0.005 and 0.01, which are the damaged items. And if we took this into account as if they're damaged, then they're not considered part of the actual order, because if they're damaged, then you're just not going to send it. And then the order process is taken in account too on the add-on process triggers of the entered of the cases sold. And there was no process and need for the lost sales because this went off the selection weight. Within the distribution at Asia, there was a delay depending on the location from where it started and to where it ended. And here's where we put a data table in referencing the countries, an expression for both the transit time and the unload time. The transit time was in days following a random triangular distribution, and the unloading time was in hours following a random uniform distribution, as well as there was a transportation cost depending on where it started and where it would end. And then we implemented that within the processing time of Asia. Once a shipment for the reorder was taken into account, there was a delay as far as the transit time from Asia to whatever specific country it was going to, as well as the unloading time, which happens depending on how many cranes were available at that port. The price for cost per use for Asia for manufacturing at Asia at any point for any single quantity of shipments was converted into USD from 272,000 or 27,200 CRC per case, which totals to $48.96 USD. For the base model, that was pretty much it as far as modeling. Like again, 6 sources to 2 sinks, and for the Asia location, there was a server and then a sink, and then entities for both models.
All right, I'm going to pull up an example of our regional distribution center. Here we go. This is just our Miami regional distribution center. The Panama distribution center will look exactly the same. So as you can see here, the biggest change we made was adding this Miami in here as a workstation between our Asia server and then our sync here. Everything else ran identical. We just put this workstation in that allowed us to input this processing time for Miami there, and then the other change that we made was over here in our transit times. These transit times here, these all had to be updated because the time for the shipping time between the regional distribution center and the countries had changed by adding that, and that was basically the main change that we made for both. Like I said, our Panama one looks identical. The only thing that's different is the processing time and the transit time here. So that's it.